So it's very simple. If you're a producer, you're going to create more value than you consume. The way you create more value than you consume is find the things that you love to do and do it in the service of those who love what you do. See, if you're going to be a producer and create value for others, how do they reward you for that? How do they compensate you for that? What if it's a stranger that you don't even know, but you've created some product that they want to utilize? They do that with money. And so if you want to have a lot of money, find the way to create the most value in the world. It's good to be here. Couple things about the introduction. That's a paper that someone else wrote about me. Self-made, that term is kind of a limiting mindset, or just a limiting term, because by no means anything that I've done has been self-made. It's been only because I've had the ambition to actually learn and also be associated with great people, like-minded individuals, be associated with mentors, people that you see in this room. Steve Harrop's in the room, one of my mentors. Dean Templin's in the room, another one of my mentors, just people that have been extraordinary in my life. When I was graduating SUU, it was the peak of the economy. It was 99, everything was going great. I had a lot of job offers at the time, and I had already been doing kind of an advising role even while I was in college. And I wasn't sure what I should do, but these other job offers looked really good. There were some prestigious firms and the names of the firms, and some that the school hadn't even placed yet. And yet I was being pretty successful doing this entrepreneurial thing, and I was really torn, and it was a really difficult time in my life trying to decide what did I want to do. I remember sitting down with Dean Templin, and he said, you know what? I think it's pretty obvious. You have a certain passion for what you're doing. You love what you're doing. He says, you're making pretty good money. You're probably making more than some of the professors here. Why would you ever want to go do these other jobs just because of the name behind them? And I thought that was great, because in the interest of the university, he could have thought, hey, let's build the university's name with some of these firms. But instead he saw, I could tell what Garrett really wants, but he was one of the few voices that was willing to say, follow your dream, follow your passion, follow the thing that cultivates energy for you. Don't just do something because everyone else in society thinks it's the way to go. From my grandparents to my parents to everyone that was influencing my life, they thought, you really got to go get this secure job and go work for someone else. And for a lot of us, being an entrepreneur or being an entrepreneurial-minded person that's within an organization is critical, and it'd be the right path. But for me, I thrive on innovation and creation and thinking of new ideas and new concepts and what can we do to expand people's minds and bring new things to the marketplace. And any of those other jobs weren't really going to allow me to do that. So I just wanted to publicly acknowledge Dean Templin. I wanted to publicly acknowledge Steve Harrop for just being tremendous value creators in my life, and people that I would call producers. Now, producer is a term that, that we've kind of coined. When people hear the term producer, sometimes they think of like a grocery store and, that little section where you go and buy produce. But what we mean by it is individuals who are committed to creating more value than they consume. If you really think about, in each moment of each day, what can you do to create more value for the people that you're around than the value you look to take, it's a different mindset. It's a different way of viewing the world. I would call it a view of abundance. In the view of abundance, we look around and we see plenty of opportunity. We see plenty of things that can be done. We see ways that we can engage in the world and make a difference. But in scarcity, people go around and they think of all the reasons why things won't work, why things are destined to fail, why there's never enough. If they could only have more money, then they'd be happy. If someone else would only give them that great, lucky opportunity, then they would survive, and not only survive, they would thrive and be the success that they want to be. See, the scarcity mentality is one of a consumer mindset. And the consumer mindset is so destructive to human nature. It's so destructive to really our ability to love life and enjoy life and be fully engaged and live in a life that we can walk around and say, you know what, I'm happy. If you're in the consumer mindset and in scarcity, it's impossible to be happy on a consistent basis, because you're always going to be looking for some external event or circumstance to bring you joy. But instead, if you look and say, what do I have within me? Who am I and what are my abilities? And you engage in those natural talents and those things that you're passionate about and do that in the service of others, especially other people that value that, that's exciting. That's fun. That's where you start to really find happiness. And so it's such a simple equation. It's such a simple concept, but one that if you just pay attention to for a moment and you just think about and digest today, can make a difference for the rest of your life. It's not an equation that you're going to learn in your finance or economics courses, but to me, it's the key to all finance and to all economics. Because really the way the world works, it's governed by principles, and we can either align with them and thrive, or we could be ignorant to them and merely survive. The question is, what do you want in your life? What are you doing to discover the principles that are out there? Obviously, you're being educated when it comes to certain topics, certain concepts, certain things that are critical for you to thrive in what you're doing. But ultimately, if you're in it with the wrong mindset, no education you get here is going to matter. If you're in the scarcity mindset, you'll destroy whatever greatness was already available to you or already within you. So it's very simple. If you're a producer, you're going to create more value than you consume. The way you create more value than you consume is find the things that you love to do and do it in the service of those who love what you do. It's a pretty simple equation, but it makes all the difference in the world. Have you ever been around people that are complete consumers, and every time you're around them, they're just looking to, suck the life out of you and the energy, and you're just thinking, man, this is no fun. Consumers are the ones that keep the thieves in business. And the consumer mindset is, and what I'm talking about now, is really easy to recognize when we're talking about it philosophically. But it's very subtle and destructive when we're out there on a day-to-day basis, and especially when times feel like they're difficult or tough. See, anyone can be in abundance when everything seems to be going perfect. Like finals are over, everyone's in abundance. Everyone's happy, right? But the week before finals, there's a lot of scarcity. At least if you're me, I hadn't studied quite enough, and I waited till the last minute every now and again. Part of that entrepreneurial mindset. But you find scarcity in situations when people are saying, this isn't what I want, this isn't ideal. But I'll tell you, when you're faced with scarcity, you'll find that you're in scarcity because of the way you feel. You'll feel negative emotions, fear, doubt, worry, concern. But to stay in scarcity would mean that instead of doing something about it, instead of making a choice, it would say, I'm responsible for the next moment, for the next choice. That's what you would do in abundance. In scarcity, you would blame that circumstance on why you are where you are and why you feel the way you do. So things happen all the time. Events come up. You could plan your life to be ideal today, and I guarantee you there will be things that happen along the way that were unplanned, that will look as if they're unfortunate, that will feel as if the world's coming down on your shoulders. But those are also the greatest lessons, and those obstacles are the raw ingredients for some of the best businesses you've ever seen. Some of the best things that we've ever learned from people happened because they were going through some time of discontent, and they said, how do I overcome this? What can I do about it? They create a system. And there's other people that would have to face that if it wasn't for that system, if it wasn't for that knowledge, if it wasn't for that experience. But it's because they did something. They didn't just fall victim to that. See, victimhood is scarcity mentality to the T. People that say, why me? Poor me. What good does that do for you? How does that move you forward to the successful life that you want? What it does is it gets a lot of people to say, you're right, it's not your fault. You're right, this is just the way it is. And then that's when people start saying, look, you were doing something and it was risky. I think risk is the most misunderstood and misused term that's thrown out all the time. Here's what real risk is to the consumer. If you're inside of a social agreement, meaning this is the routine, this is the way life is every day, this is what's familiar, this is the comfort zone. Risk to the consumer is you've stepped outside of that. You've said, I'm willing to try something that's never happened before. I'm willing to do something that doesn't even exist today. But that's how producers live. Producers are the ones that create the very things that we enjoy before they even existed. Consumers say, I'll believe it when I see it, but the very seeing of anything is what deceives them. Because they look for the evidence of why something won't work. They look for the evidence of, hey, that's just not me, or I think that people that have money have exploited others, or they're bad people, or they must have done something deceitful. This is part of the justification. See, but the craziness behind it, or the dilemma, is a consumer actually wants more money, even if they say they don't. Even if they say money's not important, they want more money, but they feel bad for wanting it because they think that people that have money are bad people and they don't want to be a bad person. So it's this dilemma they're always in. They think money's bad, but they want more of it. What are they going to do about it? They have to understand and align with principle. See, if you're going to be a producer and create value for others, how do they reward you for that? How do they compensate you for that? What if it's a stranger that you don't even know, but you've created some product that they want to utilize? They do that with money. And so if you want to have a lot of money, find the way to create the most value in the world. Because dollars follow value. It's that simple. People that don't have enough money have to examine and look at their own life and say, what am I doing to create enough value for enough people? And I get a lot of circumstances where people say, but what about Mother Teresa? Do you know how much money that woman controlled during her lifetime? That she just didn't hoard it. It flowed right through her to whatever cause was greatest. And that's the thing. We've been taught, trained, and educated our whole life that life is about building a net worth, and that once you build a net worth, that's going to tie to your self-worth. But my question is, if you build that net worth, what are you going to do about it? If you never spend the money that you build your whole life and you never utilize it and enjoy it, it's insurance that's going to someone else. But if instead you understand how to be a producer and you're a steward over those resources and you let them come to you and flow through you and build yourself up by helping other people, then you're going to really get money coming towards you, because you're going to increase your very human life value, the very characteristics about yourself. That's what you've done. You've come to a university. That's an investment in your human life value. Are they leaving you with products? Is there a commodity here? It's an experience. It's an education. It's an investment in yourself. But if you stop there, what good would it be? It would be stored up as potential. And you've probably heard, and people have probably told you, that you're full of potential. I don't care about anyone's potential. I care about what they do with their potential. Potential stored is useless to the world. Potential realized is what we would call production. Potential realized is production. And the way you realize your potential is to create value for others. That's the bridge. On one side of the bridge is potential, on the other side is production. The road to get there is creating value. It's value creation. You start, even if you watch TV, you start to look at the books out there, this is really the way the economy's talking now. People are talking in terms of value creation. Now, higher level, it's not the mainstream media, but I'm hearing about it a lot more. Part of the reason I hear about it a lot more is because I look for that a lot more. When in abundance, when you're in the abundance mindset, you will recognize abundance. When in scarcity, you will repel and you will be blind to abundance. Here's some easy examples of what I'm talking about. Have you ever, thought about buying a car, or have you ever thought about, have you ever taken a course and you learn a term in that course and you never knew it before, but all of a sudden you hear people using that term, or you go to buy that car, all of a sudden you notice that car around all the time? It's like when I was getting married, I noticed that there was all these billboards for like wedding shower or whatever, bridal showers or whatever. I didn't even know what a bridal shower was. But see, that's why I never saw the billboard. All of a sudden, when I had my first kid, I noticed that there's a lot of little kids around. I noticed that on commercials, there were little kids. Before, I didn't really recognize that because that wasn't my mindset. That wasn't what I was looking for. So if you're in scarcity, you may have all the opportunity around you today and not recognize it. And one of the ways people don't recognize it is if they're always looking to take value first. If you want to have more in this life, look to give more. Look at what you can do to create value. And don't do it conditionally. Make it part of who you are. You don't know when the reward will come back. It's hard to measure. I could think of people that I created a lot of value for, or I did my best to create value for them, and they were just consumers and they tried to take as much value as possible. But that relationship led to a whole new relationship of someone they introduced me to that's created tremendous value in my life. What if I'd have said, well, I'm not going to create value. This person's not creating value for me. And then all of a sudden that ends a relationship, or it gets me to think in a consumer mindset, or I start to villainize someone else, or whatever it might be. What do I shut down in my life as opportunity and my way of being? If we stop worrying about external circumstance and what other people think and what we should do based upon that, but instead start to measure by what are we capable of, what are we doing to do our best, and start measuring it based upon our progress, that's much more useful. We're always going to find someone that has more money, that got a better grade on a test, that, whatever, has a nicer car, that has, whatever. We can always find that if that's what we look for. But we can always find happiness if we look for the progress that we make on a daily basis. If we look at what we have control over and what we're capable of in that moment. Because as you focus more on what you have control over, which is your own mind, your own education, your own attention, what you place your attention on is what is going to grow in your life. So what are you placing your attention on? Positivity, abundance, or scarcity? See, if you do what you have control over, it's amazing how your circle of influence expands. If you focus on those things that you can do something about, you can start having more influence and power in those things that you didn't have power in before. So if you ever find yourself thinking that the problem is out there, that very thought is the problem itself. We refer to this as the be, do, have versus have, do, be. I know of people all the time that say, if I only had a raise, then I would do more work, and then I would be happy in my job. Can you see how that's exactly backwards? Instead saying, I'm going to be as productive as I possibly could be by doing those things that are most value to the firm, and then I will have the type of position that I want, or have the money that I want, or you move on. See, external circumstances is what too many people look for. When this happens, then. I used to do it all the time in college. When finals are over, I'll be happy. When I'm done with this class, I'll be happy. But if you don't live for the moment, then there's always going to be some other if-then situation that comes along. Always. There's always going to be a situation. I recognized this last year especially. I had two partners, both 35 years of age. They died in a plane crash. Now, here's the best news about all of that, is that they lived life to the highest level while they were here. They didn't say, we're going to wait, and then when 30 years from now, we're going to retire, and then life will be good. That's not how they lived their life. They lived it by each moment and each day. And one of the guys was a radio show host. I'm a co-host with him. I was a co-host with him, and now I host the show. And each day he said, this is Les McGuire, the man who loves his life. And so that seemed like such a simple tagline. But when you really start to think about what he was saying, and you really start to analyze it, what he's saying is, each day is a blessing. Each thing that happens is a lesson. Each moment is an opportunity. And what would it take to be the type of person that loved their life in this moment? Not, I'll be happy when I graduate and I get the right job. Not, I'll be happy when whatever. Just think, each day, if you were to wake up, and just do this. Each day wake up. This is your abundance exercise. Just wake up in the morning, and first thing in the morning, say at least 5 things you're thankful for. Every morning. What are you grateful for? You know, it's like, my wife was blow drying her hair this morning, and she said, I hate my hair. I said to her, it sure is nice to have it though, isn't it? Do you like it better than the alternative? And she said, I guess I do. See, everything in life and everything we value is all about perspective. So it's amazing when we get a better perspective on what's going on, how easy it is to deal with situations that once seemed to be so difficult or such a burden or such a big deal. And part of the way to do that is start to express gratitude for those people that have created value in your life, and start to express gratitude for the great things that you have about your life, and that will foster abundance. If all you focus on are all the things that you lack, you're going to become a consumer. You're going to become more miserable. And to me, on a very real level, that's the satanic influence, is scarcity. You want to see wonderful people full of potential do insane things, watch those people in scarcity. The interesting thing about it is money happens to be one of the things that creates some of the most scarcity-minded things that I've ever seen. People destroy Years and years and years of relationship over one little issue about money. People don't live the life that they want to live based upon they don't think that they have enough or there isn't enough money. People don't pursue the professions that they want to pursue and do the things they want to do because they think if they go do the things that are going to earn money in the short term, that'll make the difference. Once again, that's a someday attitude. Someday, I'll have enough money to do the things I love to do. Look, start to think, what is it that you love to do now? And start to do those things if that's not what you're already doing. That's what's going to cultivate you being the best producer you can be. Any of us can create some amount of value, but what about creating the maximum amount of value? Get this, and it will be as valuable as any strategy, tool, technique, education that you can have. You see people that have millions and millions of dollars, but you know you have more intelligence than them. They're just dumb enough to believe in abundance and live in it. Sometimes we're so smart, we can think of all the reasons why scarcity exists. What about being just smart enough to say, look, I'm going to accept that there's abundance. I'm going to accept that I can make this next choice. Even though what happened in the past is difficult, I'm going to make the next best option with the next choice. You know, think about the widows and the kids that were left behind from my two partners. When you're around the spouses, it's inspiring because of their view of life, because of their perspective. And what they were thankful for up until that, like what did they get to experience up until that point? Well, that's why they felt lost, is because of all the great things that happened before then. And just because their husbands continue to live principle and have those conversations, we've seen amazing results in the way that they're raising their family, the way that they're living their life, the perspective they continue to have on a day-to-day basis, the way they inspire other people that have gone through difficult things in their life. I mean, I went to the funeral, and at the end, I was inspired to be a greater person. Why? Because if you commit to living your life as a producer and to be extraordinary, you're going to have to do a few things. Number one, you're going to have to break some social agreements. Social agreements are what everyone knows to be normal at that time, what everyone knows to be reasonable. More success is limited by reasonable people than we could imagine. Sometimes it takes being unreasonable. Now let me explain that a little bit. We have so many reasons. I would do this, but I could do this, but it's all of these buts that we bring up, right? But being unreasonable would say, look, I know this is out of the ordinary. I know this is extraordinary. I know that, taking a midnight flight to get somewhere. I know that driving somewhere to spend some time with someone, to create some value for them. I know that, spending money to further my education outside of just the classroom, all these things are unreasonable. But those are the things that make the difference. When we go beyond our reasons for staying where we currently are. That's the definition that I'm talking about. So let's talk about a few of the paradigms. Consumers versus producers, we've talked about that. See, consumers look to take value, and many times they still create value. And another thing to consider is we're consumers and producers just at different times and in different areas of our life. It's not just financially, it's what about our relationships? It's what about, every interaction that we have on a day-to-day basis. It's in our physical lives. Are we being producers or consumers? Are we being stewards over our bodies? Are we doing the things to remain healthy and create favorable conditions that way? Are we doing things, mentally to continue to educate ourselves beyond just the standard going to class and taking tests? So time and money spent in helping men do more for themselves is far better than mere giving. See, that's helping people increase their human life value, not just temporarily solve a situation with whether it's money. That's why money will never fix problems, because it's just, if something's broken, it's got a hole in it and you just put something in it, there's still a hole where it's leaking. You got to patch the hole. You got to figure out what's wrong, what can be done, how do you shift the paradigm? The noblest aim in life is to strive to live to make other lives happier and better. Win-lose versus win-win. Think about it. If you're doing the things that you love to do the most, the things that your natural talents, your natural abilities, and you focus on that and you live in that and you do those things, your combination of unique ability is different than any other person in the world. the exact way that you view the world, the exact thoughts that you have, the exact things of how you go about getting things done. And if that's unique, then someone else couldn't do it just as efficient as you. And by them hiring you, they now can spend the time in the things that they can do that is most unique. Both parties can end up winning. That's win-win. Because you're not going to value your natural abilities the same way someone would value them that doesn't have it. And so entering into that exchange is what creates wealth. It's the actual diversity that we all have that brings about a reason for all of us to help each other. Too many people and too much that's out there thinks that life's about win-lose. It's a zero-sum game. Life's a gamble. Some are lucky, some aren't. One person wins, someone else has more money, that means less money for the next person. That's win-lose. Win-win says, if I help someone else out, I can make more money, and so can they, based upon the help that I just gave them. Analyze that in your life. How many times do you hope that you get such a good deal when you buy something that you wouldn't care whether the other person made money or not? Is that win-win? Like, think of your very favorite restaurant. Would you want to go to your favorite restaurant, pay 50% of what you're paying now, but then 2 months later you find that the restaurant goes out of business? Don't you hope it's win-win? Don't you hope that you're able to get that food, but they also make a profit so that they stay in business and they can continue to serve you? That's actually contributing to someone's human life value. They've taken their abilities and they've brought it forth to you so that you could enjoy it. Don't you hope it's win-win? This whole language of I got a good deal or I got ripped off is all the win-lose language that's out there. People that spend all day long looking for the good deal, at what expense? What was their time worth? What was the time worth of the person that put it out? Ultimately, the way I hope to live my life on a day-to-day basis and what I've been working towards every day is where money's not the primary reason or excuse for me doing or not doing anything. That I don't ever say that I can't afford something, that I ask, how can I afford it by creating enough value? And it's only one determinant, not the determinant. See, if our vote with our dollar is always that we want the cheapest thing, then that's the type of life that we're going to live. People not producing the highest quality, but producing the cheapest thing. Now, sometimes the highest quality could be very economical, but there's other times where maybe we're placing our vote for something that it's breaking down after a day or it's not working, but that's what we keep saying that we want. That's win-lose. Selfishness versus self-interest. See, everyone does something because they get a payoff. And most people out there, they're thinking, what is going to make me happy? But see, the consumer's deceived. They're trying to do something that's going to make them happy, but the actual payoff is short-sighted and selfish. The easy example for me is it's so much easier just to sleep in rather than go work out in the mornings. Way easier. So much easier. But it's selfish because then in my best interest, as time goes on, that's not what would cultivate the ideal environment or the best preferred methods of me accomplishing what I'm out to accomplish. So selfishness is deceitful because it makes us think that we're going to be happy in the moment. Not taking care of something, not, lying to someone. That's all selfish because in the moment it makes us happy, but what does it do to us long term? In economics, you talk about secondary consequences, right? Rippling effects. You have to understand that. That's the real cost. So short-sightedness and selfishness is a payoff, but it doesn't understand the full ramifications and full spectrum of the cost to your ultimate happiness. Self-interest does. Self-interest is engaging in the things that help you to feel fulfilled in the service of others. And so, I have a Wealth of Nations quote here. If you want some really light reading, you could read that book. But it's, in people's self-interest that they actually promote and benefit society. It's a benevolent power, actually. Things are assets versus people are assets. This is a critical distinction in scarcity versus abundance. In scarcity, people think things are assets. This is why people love money and use people. But when you understand people are assets, you use money and love people. If you had every material possession you could ever imagine, but you are not able to ever communicate with another person for the rest of your life, would it be worth it? The only reason we even are here today and can stand on this ground is because someone took their human life value, which was a person, and built it so it could be utility for people. No one would pay for it if there was no utility to it. Things are merely tools for people. But people are the genuine assets. So I talked about this before. Consumers think that people that make profit or have wealth, it's evidence of exploitation, where in the abundance mindset, profit's the evidence of value creation. It's the receipt that there was value exchanged. Fear of loss versus faith in principles. Fear of loss is a tactic in a way that most people think, and if you're in the consumer mindset and you're always afraid of losing, you're motivated by, I better do this or else I'm going to lose, or I need to get into this or I'm going to lose. Professor Harrop taught it to me this way. He said, as we were investing money, we were investing actual dollars, not just paper trading, and then we could say, no, we actually made that trade. No, if the computer didn't work or we didn't make the call, you could really tell. And towards the end, the markets, it was 2000 and the markets were starting to decline. And he said, look, what you don't want to have happen is there's only a minute left in the game. And, if you're down by a few points, the last thing you want to do is get frantic and start pushing and fouling and stop thinking just to hope that you can throw it up and it's going to make the basket. You have to still understand what's going on. Fear of loss is just getting frantic. It's hype. It's hope. It's risk. But it's not principled. And it's not fun. Have you heard about these people that, are so upset with their brokers in the 90s because they're only making 30% and their neighbor made 40%? Fear of loss. But they're the same people that are, freaking out the second the market has one bad day, they're pulling all their money out. They never make money because it's fear of loss. It drives their life. And so they hear there's appreciation, Cedar City, the housing market's going up. They want to hurry and gamble and get a house because they think they could sell it to someone else before it goes down. All fear of loss, all gambling. You have to understand, what's the real value proposition? What's the real value creation? Or else you get stuck in that trap. And that lesson's big in life, because if you don't learn it now, and you learn it by experience is a rough teacher, but you learn the lesson pretty well. I had to learn this early on with the way I invested. The way I live my life, I had some fear of loss. And when I recognize it now, the best way to overcome fear is to continue to educate and align with principle. Continue to educate yourself. Education is one of the best ways to reduce your risk. Educate yourself. Then find other people that are committed to education, that are committed to living life by principle, and associate with them. Associate with people that want to live unreasonable. They don't want to live the traditional, ordinary, just live okay, but they want to be extraordinary. Associate with them. You can start to share big ideas, and they're not going to shoot it down or tell you, well, you don't want to do that. They'll start to say, how are you going to do that? Have you thought through this? Have you talked to this person? They've done something similar. But faith in principles is, if you believe principles exist and you have faith in it, then you act in your self-interest to align with them. And so there's the quote: since fear is mostly about ignorance, the best part is that it's as temporary as you choose. Part of fear is laziness. Part of worry is laziness, of not addressing it, of not being educated and not taking action on it, of still hoping that someone else will do it for you. Here's something that I wish I would have understood this at an earlier age, and I still learned it at a very young age. Has anyone read the book, The Millionaire Next Door? I don't like that book. Here's why. Because if you followed exactly what it says, it starts to lead people to believe that accumulated money is power. Accumulation without utilization is merely stored potential, and to me is worthless. If all you do is accumulate money the rest of your life by being cheap, everyone in here could be a millionaire if you just don't ever spend money. But also, are you going to enjoy life? Are you going to do the things that you want to do? I'll share something personal. Hopefully it's not too personal, but, Professor Harrop goes and takes his kids on a great cruise every year or on a great vacation. I mean, some really elaborate ones. What if he said, well, that might really destroy our net worth and I really want to accumulate and get all those big numbers up there? Why? So his kids can wait for him to die? I mean, it's utilization that makes the difference. Applied knowledge is the real power. If you want a lot of money, be a steward, get knowledge, do something about it. If you want to accumulate money, you're going to accumulate a bunch of dots on a piece of paper. Money's useful, but only in the right context. It's only paper. It's only a concept. It's only a thing. It's only as valuable as what you do with it. Quantity of stuff versus quality of life. Consumers just want quantity of stuff. More and more and more. Enough points on, it's like playing a game. You want to get as many points on the scoreboard, but the game never ends. Versus quality of life. This is part of focusing on people as assets, not just things. Interestingly enough, producers probably spend a lot more money than consumers combined, but they still create more value than what they consume. Calculate consequences versus commit to principles. See, sometimes we get deceived if we calculate consequences, like I was talking about earlier. You go to create value, but only conditionally, versus just being a value creator. Just commit to principles. Then see what happens. Just commit to the principles. Just live a principled life. And sometimes that's a high cost, especially in the moment. But it has a big payoff if you're willing to live that way. Always vote for principle, though you may vote alone, and you may cherish the sweetest reflection that your vote is never lost. What I'm saying is, just because something's popular doesn't make it right. Just because everyone's doing something doesn't make it right. You have to understand, is it principled? Just because it's popular doesn't mean you should follow it. There's a book written like in the 1800s called like Popular Delusions. It talks about tulip mania and all these crazy things that just social agreements. People flock to these ideas that were just ideas, and they gave it all this value and credence, and there was really nothing there other than someone hyping it up. So last thing is, you're really the author of how your life's going to go. There's going to be different roads that come along. There's going to be different obstacles, different bumps, but you're holding the pen in your hand. You're going to have the choice in the next moment. You can do one of two things. You can become a victim, or you can be the hero. You choose. The path is yours. Sometimes you have to pave it. Sometimes it's not already laid out for you. But is it worth it? That's the question. So I got 15 minutes. If there's any questions, I want to stick around and just answer a few questions. But I just wanted to share with you some of the basic things that I think have helped me to live a workable life, to be happy in my life. And if it's valuable for you, try it on, see how it's useful. But more than anything, remember, producers create more value than they consume. Consumers take more value than they create. If you're going to be self-reliant, if you're going to live a workable life, if you're going to be extraordinary, if you're going to leave a legacy, it's only if you commit to being a producer and living in the abundance paradigm. Questions? Yeah?
How do you view risk in your life?
Well, risk is something that's there, but if it is there, I view it as something to continue to educate myself, to continue to do due diligence, but not something to stop me based upon what others perceive as risk. See, general population and social agreement is that being an entrepreneur would be risky. But to me, I'll even make this statement. There are no even risky investments, only risky investors. It's about people. It's about your own situation. You know, think about a hammer. A hammer in my hands would be useless because I'm not very crafty with the hammer. A hammer in a skilled carpenter's hands could be a very useful tool, and a hammer in a child's hands could be a detrimental tool. It all depends on the person whether that was valuable or not. So to me, when someone else tells me something is risky, from their perspective it is. But based upon my education and what I'm willing to do about it, if I can incorporate my human life value and my characteristics and my abilities into something, that's one of the best ways I can mitigate risk. That's one of the best ways I can reduce risk. But as a producer, all consumers are going to see what producers do as risky. Because as a producer, what I do first is believe. Whether it exists in the marketplace or not, I say, is it possible? And I believe anything is possible. So anything's possible. Then I would say, okay, if it's possible, what could I do to make it probable? What could I do to create favorable circumstances? And a lot of that is, I have to start paying for the education. I have to get other experts involved. I have to spend money on it. I don't go into it blindly. And then I continue to say, how can I create the most value in this situation for the most people? And I have a whole system of 10 questions that as I go through the 10 questions, I quantify these questions, 0 to 5. Now, this isn't like a risk analysis where someone would say, hey, I believe high risk equals high return. I think that's a lie. High risk doesn't equal high return. If it were true, we would buy lottery tickets and we'd be wealthy. That's the highest risk I could think of. I would never raise my kid on the philosophy of high risk equals high return. Like, oh, I just won't watch him and he'll figure out more things because that's risky. No, see, if a financial thing doesn't make sense, or whatever else would be perceived to be risky doesn't make sense in the regular application of life, or if I move it to the nth degree, then I would consider it not viable or not aligned with principle. But if something is deemed to be risky because it's just never happened before, like think about it. Someone creating an airplane, that was risky. But look at all that we've done to manage that risk over time, to mitigate it, to create contingencies, to bring in expertise. All that took a multitude of people, a lot of research, a lot of human life value, but it became possible. But before flight was ever possible, someone had to imagine it first. So it's usually our imagination that people would consider risky, but it's what we do to implement that imagination and the people that are involved with it that would make it whether it's risky or not risky. So you could have the exact same investment, the same type of idea coming from two different people, and in one it would be completely risky, and in the other it would be very little risk at all. But anyone in the scarcity paradigm is going to pose risk to any investment, for sure, or any situation in life. Because anytime you're going by fear of loss, anytime you believe, there's a dilemma there because you think that doing well is a bad thing, I mean, you could see that there's going to be sabotage in there somewhere, right? So the biggest things I invest in right now are my own intellectual property, my own businesses, where I see that being the least risk. I don't invest in a lot of products right now. Will I down the road? Yeah. Did I before? Yeah. But right now, I'm closing a real estate deal right now, and I thought, why would I invest this back into real estate if I can invest it into a book that I changed the title of my book. It's called Killing Sacred Cows, which is maybe a little bit of a weird title, but people see in social agreements and social beliefs, there are sacred cows. People don't want to even talk about it or look at it. It's just tradition. But it's the very thing that hold people back from happiness. So Killing Sacred Cows is about defeating those myths and subtle lies so that people can have prosperity. And so I thought, why not invest all that money in my book? Why not invest it in marketing that? What are the external benefits of that? What would that do to me as a speaker and being able to charge to speak? What would that do to my other businesses and getting the message out there that's different than most of what's being perpetuated out there? What would, I start thinking about those returns. And so what I do is I hired a PR firm. I started to brainstorm ideas around it. So I didn't just throw the investment. I created a whole plan to what I was going to do to make that as effective as possible. And then I built as many contingencies in place that I could possibly think of in the moment. But even if something happens that I didn't prepare for, I'm passionate about it. So I'm going to stay engaged in it. Where I have investments that I'm like, I got to do something about that because I got to be a steward, but I don't have any passion for it, So in my mind, it's transformed a little bit. Yep. Yeah.
What are some books that you would recommend to read that encourage this mindset?
As a Man Thinketh is a good book. Man's Search for Meaning is a good book. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a good book. Good to Great is another good book. Go to producerrevolution.com and go to the bookstore. There's a ton of books on there. Yeah.
I'm sincerely interested in how guys like yourself get going. What were you doing that first got you going towards success? I mean, as far as financially.
I think when I was 10 or so, somewhere someone put a message in my mind that I wanted to create more for my community than I took from it. That was a defining moment for me. Then I was involved in sports, and I thought I would like to make some additional money when I was 15. And so I went and talked to my dad about it, and he started bringing vehicles home from the mine, and I would clean them, and I'd get paid for that. And my mom worked at a credit union, so I started cleaning the repossessed vehicles there. And that's how I created a whole business for the entrepreneurial thing. I mean, it was labor. I had to do the work, but I eventually hired employees while I was still in high school. I started presenting on it, actually presenting that business to win money for presenting it, helped me refine some of my presentation skills, started having me, start doing income statements and balance sheets at an early age so I could, talk about the financials. That was a great education because it had real application at that moment. And then even just going to a university like here was awesome because I would go talk to my professors. I had a personal relationship with them, so I could talk about things outside the classroom that impacted my life and my business and the things that I was doing. So I still have great friends that are professors here and people that I keep in touch with and that have influenced my life that still carry through to this day. So once again, people are assets. It's not about the letter grade that you get here. That is part of it. That shows that you're willing to learn. That shows that you're capable of memorizing and doing certain things. But what do you do about the relationships you develop here? The people I met at SUU that I still keep in touch with, I mean, we had a softball team that was over 90% people from SUU up in Salt Lake. We took first 2 years in a row, by the way. And so I associate with them. I talk to them. Some of my first clients were professors, parents of people I went to school with. There are people that are working with me, like Dorian went to school here, and Dorian works with me and runs our whole accredited network, which is just a huge venture. And other people that are even from SU are looking to even move back to Utah and come work in the different avenues and different firms that we're involved with. But one key lesson that I've learned recently more than anything is when I have a business venture, whoever I bring into that business venture to partner with, I make sure that they bring more value than I have to offer in whatever area they're coming into. And as I've done that, I've seen a lot of my businesses grow and succeed. And the areas where I brought someone in to help fit a need or what I thought was going to be helpful, but they didn't have the right mindset or they were just asking me all along, then those businesses didn't work to the same degree. Now, the thing is, I still may have an expertise that they don't have that will be tons of value for the business. But what they bring is unique to that business. And there's businesses I have that I spend almost no time in month to month, and these are pretty sizable businesses at this point, that if I tried to spend, it's almost like if I tried to spend time in it, I'd probably mess it up at this point. They're doing a great job. And then as you continue to be a value creator, what you'll see is if you keep that mindset up, there's people I've wanted to meet my whole life, and I just wrote a list. Here's something to even do. Who are the people that you'd love to meet in this world that you haven't met yet? I wrote that list down. Last year, I think I met 8 or 9 people from that list. I mean, I'm thinking big. I'm thinking, here's someone I really like to meet. I've listened to their material. I've read a book from them, whatever it is. And then as soon as I found an opportunity to meet them, I made the call. I made the trip. I rearranged my schedule. And when I went, the very first thing I tried to do was create more value than anyone else had created in a first meeting with them. I remember I met a mentor in my life, someone that runs an entrepreneurial program. They've taught 30,000 people. To be in the program, you have to make $200,000 minimum. Most of the people in the program are $1 million and above. Huge influencer. If you look at some of the best-selling authors, they've been in this program. I mean, this guy's a total stud. I just said, I wonder what it would take. And we ran into him one day in Chicago when we were going through a course. He's like elusive, and you almost don't know he exists even though he owns the company. He's just a genius at creating these systems. And so immediately I just went up, introduced myself. I'd love to have lunch with you today. He said, great. Yeah, come have lunch. I went to have lunch. There was 50 people around him. So I made a phone call the next day and I said, hey, I was scheduled to have lunch with Dan. It didn't seem to work out. Do you know the next time he's going to be in Chicago or the next time we could sit down and have lunch? And I didn't get a call back, so we called again. And then finally got a lunch scheduled. When we sat down, I said, you know what? I noticed that you're looking to expand into Utah with your coaching program. I think that we could place a bunch of people in that program because it's created so much value for us. We had an event. They'd never done an event like this. We had 200 people show up. We're now in their top 3 in the entire nation for the number of referrals that send in. So we did a radio show together. We went out and we recorded a DVD together. They had me over to their house. They said, anytime you want coaching, just call. We'll give it to you personally. You got to create value first, though. And the thing is, you got to be willing to do something unreasonable, like say, I'm going to meet that person. And just write it down and find a way to make it happen. And when you see the opportunity, don't be afraid. Just make it happen. Sometimes you got to do what's uncomfortable in the moment. So get good people around you and don't be afraid to share your ideas. That helpful? Cool. Any other questions? We've got a few minutes. Yeah.
How about a sneak peek of what one of those sacred cows would be?
Couple of the chapters, what I name the chapter is what the belief is, and then I dispel it. So it takes money to make money. That's one of the things that we're dispelling. It's all about the numbers. It's another thing. High risk equals high return. Just the concept of retirement. I'm gonna have another book come out about that because I just touch on it in this. But I think it's amazing that there's so much information out there that says, if you want to retire, here's what you got to do. You got to plug in this equation and earn this rate of return, and then maybe you can live off 70% of your income, and you'll be in a lower tax bracket, and all these things. And I'm like, look, why is everyone analyzing all this? Because why don't you just find something that you love to do and forget about that concept? Why don't you find what it would take to get economic independence in the shortest period of time so you could choose what you want to do on a day-to-day basis? Professor Harp doesn't have to be here. He could be retired. He retired a long time ago. In his mind, there was no amount of money that could buy him out of doing what he was passionate about and what he believed in. What an example to me at an early age to be able to have that actually watch that happen, then I can write about it. Because it wasn't just a philosophy. I saw it, and then I had someone to look up to and say, I've seen other people do it this way. Sure, maybe 99% of the population would have taken the other road, but that's why the other 99% isn't extraordinary. So, a lot of the things that I'm just dispelling is just the traditional beliefs around finance. And it's a lot of that traditional belief that's held people back, It's held them into captivity and bondage their whole life, thinking that one day something will be better. So there's 10 chapters, 10 different fallacies that we're basically destroying. And, the types of authors that will be unhappy with what we talk about would be the Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman, who else? Pretty much most of the authors for CNBC that have to do with finance. Most of the firms that want to never have you utilize your money, they're not going to be overly happy. I'm prepared. I'm prepared to go on TV. I'm prepared to talk about it with the wealthiest people in the nation, whatever. That's where my belief is, So the thing is, if they understood what I understood, I'm telling people to use all that information, but to discern truth from falsehood and not just buy into fallacies. So you're still going to use the financial institutions. It just doesn't mean that, the best thing to do in your life is to set money aside in a 401k, just keep your eyes closed, and then 30 years from now you can get to it. I would start asking, is that really what you want? Are you comfortable with the amount of control the government has over that plan? Does the match really equal 100% rate of return? If it did, by the way, you'd become the GDP, right? If people earned 100% every single year, wouldn't they eventually have trillions of dollars, even if you started with a small amount? There's just so many fallacies. And more than anything, I don't want to tell people what to do, but I want them to at least question what they're currently doing and make sure it's what they really want to do, and they're not just blindly following, just like sheep when they jump the yellow line in the road thinking that it's something they have to jump. Every sheep after it's jumping the yellow line. It's just paint on the asphalt. But I see tons of people do that in their lives, And there's a lot of misery out there. There's a lot of poverty thinking. There's a lack of self-reliance. There's a lot of consumers. And look at the few producers that there are, the small percentage, what greatness has come about because of that. Think about what we haven't tapped into because of people buying into the fallacy of scarcity.
You talk about unique ability.
Mm-hmm.
How would one find their unique ability?
There's a lot of ways to find it, but here's just a few strategies to help you find it. List all the activities that you do, and then go through and say which activities increased your energy, which ones were energy neutral, and which ones decreased your energy. That's going to be an insight. Go talk to the people that you know best and ask them, what do you think that I naturally do well? Because we discount what we naturally do well so often because we figure everyone else is good at it just because we are. Well, that's not the case at all. So go have those conversations. Then immerse yourself in study and introspection. Read books like The Prosperity Paradigm is a book that you can get through our organization. You can get the book Unique Ability at strategiccoach.com. You can get the book Now Discover Your Strengths in any Barnes & Noble. You can get, what other good books have I, there's just a lot of books that talk and go through this concept. There's a program called the Kolbe Index, Kolbe. Go take the Kolbe profile. That'll help you understand your conation, the things that you naturally do. I found that to be extraordinarily valuable. Meditate. I mean, that's some of the things you gotta, you know, do certain things like that to start to find it. And then that'll be part of it. We have a whole program that we have called the Freedom Fast Track that helps people discover it. But it also deals with the financial part too. It's something that I've been writing for the last 9 years, and it just got launched in January. So it's pretty fun, pretty exciting. Some of the people that have partnered with me in it are people that I've looked up to for years and years, and now they're part of the program and I'm partnered with. So it's kind of fun to see some of those things coming about. One last question, if there is any. Yeah.
A lot of the principles that you pointed out are easy to recognize that they're true, but hard to apply in your life. Like
Right.
what strategy do you have in like helping to internalize the principles that you talked about?
Simple formula. Turn your brain on and fill it with good information. Read on a regular basis, listen to the right things, attend the right events, and I mean the right ones. There's a lot of reading out there that's not going to help. The second thing is associate with like-minded individuals, associate with other people that want prosperity in their life, that want to learn about principles, that want to apply principles. And then the third thing is start taking action. That's the easiest formula to start doing that. And what you'll find is when things don't work, you need to go evaluate that and say, where wasn't I aligned with principle? What could I learn from that situation? And when things do work, say, what was the principle there?
Want to master your money? Want to figure out the things that you could do to improve your finances? Click here and check out more videos like this on Money Matters.